I agree with our Democrat colleagues that we have to focus on the victims of crime. And boy, did we get an earful from some of them in Manhattan earlier this week. And what I heard from victims from crime is that they observe the soft on crime policies pushed by Democrats as far more dangerous than law-abiding gun owners who work to keep our communities safe. One of our witnesses even talked about being a good guy with a gun, being somebody able to provide for self-defense and the righteous defense of others. And I heard in that hearing a term I had never heard before from the Democrat witness, a crime gun. So I guess there are guns and crime guns. And I was left wondering what makes a gun a crime gun, and I think it's that it's in the hands of a criminal committing a crime. The very criminals that Democrats seem quite willing to turn out on our streets time and time again. We heard the Democrat witness at a joint hearing between the Judiciary Committee and the Oversight Committee, invited by Democrats, say that these braces make guns more powerful and more lethal, and it was the laugh line of the hearing and summarily rejected by experts. But what this rule proves is that the Biden administration and Democrats are intent to weaponize the ATF in order to erode the Second Amendment and take away constitutional rights from otherwise law-abiding Americans, and they intend to do so without the approval of Congress.
Gentleman yield.
And what undermines the passion for my Democrat colleagues is that when they had the ability to do this in law, when they had unified control of the government, they didn't do it. And so when they really come for your rights, and when they really want to erode the Constitution, they don't do it with folks who can be sent home by the voters. They do it with unelected bureaucrats with green eye shades somewhere in some windowless cubicle in the bowels of the ATF.
Will the gentleman yield?
The ATF has abused its rulemaking authority in attempting to regulate stabilizing braces, and these braces were invented by Alex Brosco, a U.S. Marine Corps and Army veteran, to help disabled combat veterans better control and safely fire guns at shooting ranges. I represent many of these disabled veterans in my district, and I can tell you the extent to which the opportunity to engage in competitive shooting is a mental health enhancer. It's what keeps people engaged. I worry about the number of veteran suicides we may see increase at an already totally unacceptable level if we were to take this away and take this mental health tool away. The ATF's decision also contradicted its own prior 2012 determination made during the Obama administration, not known as particularly kind to gun owners. And that was a decision that was relied upon by gun owners for a decade, that they would not be subject to the National Firearms Control Act with the purchase of this stabilizing brace. Now the ATF's rule will require the owners of roughly 40 million stabilizing braces in circulation to obtain some special registration, surrender or destroy their brace by the compliant state, or face severe criminal penalties. And what I can tell you is these will be enforced. I am increasingly aware of circumstances in my district where almost anyone involved in the firearms industry, they are seeing the ATF show up with crazy demands and enforcement that goes beyond what we would normally consider from a government agency simply trying to seek compliance. My friends, this is part of a comprehensive attack on the Second Amendment, and this legislation would vindicate at least those who require this stabilizing brace. And while we all share the desire to reduce the frequency of gun violence, there is no evidence to suggest that these stabilizing braces contribute to it. And it is rather rich that we're now hearing from our Democrat colleagues about the stabilizing braces, because when there was legislation that they proposed that they couldn't get passed in the Senate, they told us that stabilizing braces could convert weapons into bump stocks. And what a revealing moment that was. I yield my final moments to my colleague from Kentucky.
Well, the gentleman from Florida is correct. These are not shoulder stocks, as the other side says. There's two ways we know they're not shoulder stocks. One, The legal definition of a shoulder stock says designed and intended to be fired from the shoulder. These were not designed or intended to be fired from the shoulder. They were intended to be fired from the wrist. The other way we know they're not shoulder stocks is for a decade the ATF said they were not. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Rhode Island, Mr. Cicilline.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just 2 weeks ago, Nashville was the 13th school shooting to result in injury or death in 2023, and the 89th gun incident to take place on school grounds this year. This happens so often that I fear too many Americans are becoming numb to it. So numb that my colleagues sit here doing everything in their power to protect their unlimited access to guns, while we do nothing to protect our children from being slaughtered in their classrooms. Guns are the leading cause of death for children in America. That's a disgrace, and we're not powerless to do anything about it. We sit here today, we're taking aim at the ATF, an agency created in part to protect Americans from gun violence. My colleagues are so obsessed with dismantling all gun restrictions in this country that they're fighting to allow gun manufacturers to continue exploiting a loophole in stabilizing brace regulations that makes weapons more dangerous. Claims that braces that allow a pistol to be fired from the shoulder aren't dangerous or don't change the gun are disingenuous at best and outright lies at worst. Let me put it plainly. Allowing a pistol to be fired from the shoulder creates a short-barreled rifle. And these highly powerful weapons have been recognized as extremely dangerous and have been heavily regulated in this country since 1934. And the industry knows this. Just watch this video for yourself. Mr. Chairman, I ask the clock stop. Okay, it's on. Never mind.
You see a gun like this and you're like, how the heck is a barrel with that length a pistol? Well, we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about SB Tactical and their stabilizing braces.
Sold and used to make pistols and just short barrel rifles, and everyone knows it. You just saw for yourself how this works. This is not about providing tools to disabled people who want to shoot firearms, many of whom are veterans. And my colleague said there's 10 to 15 million people who they described as weak who need these to shoot. We know that's not what's going on here. These braces are not that. They're manipulation by the gun lobby and gun sellers to skirt regulations on short barrel rifles and increase their sales because they make these firearms more lethal, more accurate, and easier to conceal. Shootings in major shootings have exploited this loophole in Dayton, Boulder, Colorado Springs, and most recently in Nashville. Who knows how many more murderers will do the same if we don't use our common sense and end this loophole, which is exactly what the ATF is doing with this rule. Joint Resolution 44 puts all Americans in danger of even deadlier shootings, such as the Q Club shooting, where a stabilizing brace helped the shooter kill 5 people and injured 19 more at an LGBTQ club. Once again, you think all of these mass shooters that result in the deaths of all these people just put on these braces because they felt like giving some money to the plastic industry? They did it because it made the weapon more effective, more accurate, and more lethal. You saw it in the video. Stop the charade, leave the ATF alone so we can stop this dangerous killing of our constituents. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Fitzgerald, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just be brief. I remember in Judiciary in the 117th Congress, we had a similar discussion and a similar debate. And quite honestly, a lot of the members had no idea kind of what we were talking about or how the nomenclature of any type of firearm can be changed or the uniqueness in and around it, or that the caliber and certainly the ability to utilize any type of firearm it is sometimes in just the eye of the beholder. And, you know, there are many people that I know, including members of my family, that utilize many different types of rifles for, you know, the 9-day gun season for deer hunting in Wisconsin, in which over 400,000 individuals go safely into the woods for 9 days and hopefully get a deer. So it's once again, I just wanted to remind the committee that you can focus on the tragedies that have happened across this nation, but also you have to remember those that continually on a regular basis are gun owners and should be protected by the Second Amendment. The focus of this discussion that we have continued to have, Congress after Congress, is misplaced. And I think that just had to be brought forth again this evening.
Well, gentlemen,
And I would yield back.
Gentlemen, yield.
Yielded. Chair.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. I think we're making it too complicated. This is, as Mr. Massey said, a 4-ounce plastic accessory created for disabled veterans by a veteran, now used by approximately 40 million Americans. And 10 years ago and 5 months, November 26, 2012, the ATF said, just fine, no problem. Now here they are 10 years later, changing their mind, and they just did it. We didn't do it, as Mr. Massey pointed out. Democrats had the Congress last 2 years. They passed a bunch of gun legislation through this committee. They could have done this. They didn't do it. The ATF did it. No bill that came through committee, no bill that went to the House floor, no bill that went to the Senate, no bill signed by the president. They just did it. And now 40 million Americans, if you don't destroy the brace, destroy the gun, get a longer barrel, or register your firearm, you're a felon. And as Mr. Massey pointed out, a bunch of Americans don't even know it. They don't even know. They're in some states where they can't. That's the problem. So you guys introduce the legislation if you want, but we should get rid of this rule that is going to cause so much harm to so many Americans, many of them, the type of Americans that Mr. Fitzgerald just described, who like to hunt, particularly deer hunt in Wisconsin. That's how simple this is. Do it the right way. Pass it through Congress if you want to do it. Don't chip away at the Second Amendment by having bureaucrats do it. The ATF do it when 10 years ago in 5 months they said it was just fine. Yield back to the gentleman from Wisconsin.